The most destructive. Every record in this video was set by something other than wind speed. This one was set by time. It barely moved. On the 27th of May, 1997, an F5 touched down at Jarrell, Texas, north of Austin. A tornado normally crosses the ground at 30 to 40 miles an hour. This one crawled at 5 to 10. When it reached a neighborhood called Double Creek Estates, it slowed down further and sat there for about 3 minutes. 3 minutes does not sound long. It is roughly 20 times longer than a normal tornado spends over any one house. Nothing was left. 38 homes were not damaged. They were gone, down to bare concrete slabs, and the debris that should have been heaped around them was not there either. It had been ground small enough to scatter. Then it did something almost nothing else on record has done. It peeled the asphalt off 3 county roads, about 525 feet from each one. It scoured the soil down as much as 18 inches, leaving bare dirt where grass had been. 27 people died, all of them in that one neighborhood. Around 300 cattle died with them, and some were thrown more than a quarter of a mile. The wind at Jarrell was probably not the strongest wind ever measured. It simply had longer to work than any wind before it. The deadliest. The deadliest tornado in recorded history was not the strongest one. It was the one that hit the weakest houses, bamboo and straw. On the 26th of April, 1989, a tornado about a mile wide crossed Daulatpur and Saturia in central Bangladesh. It killed around 1,300 people. That is nearly twice the deadliest tornado in American history, in a fraction of the distance. 12,000 more were injured. 80,000 lost their homes in a single evening. Now the part that explains it. Rated F3. F3 is the middle of the scale. It is a tornado that would take the roof off an American house and leave the walls standing. In Manikganj, it met homes built of bamboo, straw, and unmortared brick, resting on the ground with nothing anchoring them down. There was no warning system of any kind, and the area is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. There is one more thing working against them. The region had been in drought for 6 months, which loaded the air with the heat that built the storm in the first place. The same tornado dropped on Oklahoma would have made the news for a week and killed a few dozen people at most. Every other record in this video was set by weather. This one was set by construction. The biggest outbreak. The largest tornado outbreak ever recorded is not the worst one. A smaller outbreak 37 years earlier was worse in every way that matters. 360. Between the 25th and the 28th of April 2011, roughly 360 tornadoes touched down across the American Southeast. More than 200 came in a single day, which is still the record for any 24-hour period. 324 people died, 316 of them on the 27th alone. 4 of those tornadoes were rated EF5, the top of the scale, and one of them erased a town called Phil Campbell. Remember that name. Now go back to April of 1974. 7 of them. That outbreak produced about 148 tornadoes, well under half as many, but 23 of them were F4 and 7 were F5. 30 violent tornadoes in roughly 24 hours, a figure nothing since has come close to matching. Ted Fujita spent 10 months flying the damage paths afterward. He came back seriously considering whether the scale needed an F6, then decided the category could not physically exist. 2011 holds the record for how many. 1974 still holds the record for how bad. The longest track. A tornado that stays on the ground for hours is not proving how strong it is. It is proving that nothing got in its way. In December. On the 10th of December, 2021, a tornado crossed from Tennessee into Kentucky and stayed down for 165 miles. That is the longest continuous track ever confirmed by Damage Survey. It was on the ground for about 3 hours, moving at around 55 miles an hour, and it killed 57 people. That single tornado made it the deadliest December outbreak the United States has ever had. December is the point. Winter storms have very little of the raw instability that builds a summer supercell, and that sounds like it should make things safer. It never stopped. What winter has instead is shear, which is wind-changing speed and direction with height. Extreme shear with weak instability builds a low, fast, hard storm that never rains itself out and never cycles. It does not stall, it does not weaken, and it does not rebuild. It just rides. Add the low-level jet, which strengthens after dark rather than fading, and the storm gets fed all night. Compare that to Jarrell, which set its record by barely moving at all. One tornado made history by staying still. This one made history by never being stopped. The highest. Every American who lives near mountains has been told that mountains break tornadoes up. They do not. Above 10,000 feet. On the 21st of July, 1987, an F4 tore through the Teton Wilderness in Wyoming, crossed the Continental Divide above 10,000 feet, and cut a path 24 miles long and up to 1.5 miles wide. It knocked down roughly 1 million trees across about 15,000 acres. Nobody died because there was nobody up there to die, and the F4 rating had to be worked out from the trees because there was not a single building on the entire path. Quick thing before we keep going. If you are into this, subscribe, like, and drop a comment. It genuinely helps the channel. Ted Fujita flew the wreckage and mapped what had happened, and the answer was the opposite of what everyone expected. 72 of them. He counted 72 separate microbursts traveling with the tornado. Those are violent downdrafts, and the assumption had always been that rough terrain and sinking air would tear a vortex apart. They did not tear it apart. They fed it. Broken ground generates extra horizontal spin, and the storm's updraft tilts that spin upright and pulls it in. Altitude is not protection. The mountain is an ingredient. The farthest traveled. A photograph from an American tornado has been found 200 miles away. A refrigerator from the same kind of tornado moves about 200 yards. Paper wins. On the 27th of April, 2011, a tornado destroyed Phil Campbell, Alabama. A photograph from one of those houses was picked up in Lenoir City, Tennessee, 219 miles away. It is the farthest a piece of tornado debris has ever been documented traveling. That is not a story about wind strength. It is a story about mass. Heavy falls out. A tornado lifts everything into a cloud of debris at its base. Light objects get carried out of the tornado and into the updraft of the parent storm, and that updraft goes to the top of the thunderstorm, around 40,000 feet. Up there, the wind is no longer blowing from the south. It is blowing hard from the west, and whatever reached that height gets carried downwind for hours before it lands. Anything heavy never gets there. Spinning throws mass outward, so the tornado flings a refrigerator out of its own core almost immediately. The record it broke tells you the same thing. It had stood since 1915, and it was a canceled check from a Kansas tornado found 210 miles away. The heaviest object confirmed from that outbreak traveled 68 miles, and it was a windbreaker. That is the whole rule in one sentence. A tornado does not throw the heavy things furthest. It throws away the heavy things and carries the light ones. The Costliest. The most expensive tornado in American history did not happen recently. It happened in 1896, and the reason it looks cheap is that the country was poor, not the storms. Every list of costly disasters is dominated by recent events, and people read that as proof the weather is getting worse. It is mostly proof that we keep building more expensive things in the same places. Harold Brooks and Charles Doswell normalized a century of tornado damage, adjusting not just for inflation, but for accumulated national wealth, which has grown about 4 times faster than inflation since the 1920s. 1896, the tornado that crossed the Mississippi into St. Louis on the 27th of May, 1896, comes out as the most expensive tornado on record, around $5.4 billion in today's money. It killed more than 250 people in about 20 minutes, crossed the river, and tore up the Eads Bridge and the steamboat traffic underneath it. St. Louis then does something no other city does. It appears twice in the normalized top 5, because it was hit again in 1927, and when the whole list is normalized that way, something disappears. The upward trend goes flat. Spread evenly across the century, tornado damage is not climbing. The storms did not get more expensive, we did. The first forecast. Here's the record that explains why all the others exist. For 60 years, forecasters in the United States were forbidden to use the word tornado. The word was banned. The ban started in 1887. The reasoning was that a tornado cannot be predicted, so naming one in a forecast would only cause panic that helped nobody. Whatever the intention, the result was that for 6 decades, the country's own weather service was not allowed to warn anyone about the thing killing the most people. Then, on the 20th of March, 1948, a tornado went straight through Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma and destroyed 52 aircraft. 5 days later, 2 Air Force officers, Fawbush and Miller, were told to work out what had happened. Going through the charts, they noticed a specific combination lining up: wet air pushing north at low level, dry air above it, and a fast river of wind crossing overhead. On the 25th of March, 5 days after the first one, they saw the same pattern forming and issued a forecast. That evening, a tornado came through the base again and passed within 100 yards of the first track. It was the first successful tornado forecast in history, and it had to come out of the military because the civilian forecasters were still not allowed to say the word. That ban was not lifted until 1950, so look back at what actually set every record in this video. It was 3 minutes of standing still. It was bamboo instead of brick. It was a mountain feeding a storm instead of breaking it. It was a country getting richer. Not one of them was a wind speed. Here's the question. One tornado in this video killed more people than any other in recorded history, and it was officially rated only F3, the middle of the scale. Which one, and what made it so deadly? Tell me in the comments.